to move on to the case of Abdul Azadi, the man who is on the run currently after that hideous, corrosive attack. He's suspected of committing that vicious crime. Now we find out more details about him. He was refused asylum twice, went on to commit a sexual assault, converted to Christianity and was accepted for asylum on a third try. Should this man have ever been in this country?
No. And this is, it's pretty gruesome news all around today. Again, this is horrific attack, and we need to know far more details about it. But this is somebody who came from Afghanistan, and he arrived here illegally in the back of a lorry before the Taliban took back control of Afghanistan. So it was certainly not the dangerous place that it's deemed to be now. So he shouldn't have remained in the UK after his first asylum claim was rejected. On what grounds he applied for asylum, I don't know, but it was rejected. So why then was he allowed to stay on for a second asylum claim? And this is part of the problem with the system, which is what the government has been trying to clamp down on, that these almost limitless appeals that go on. And then a third time, and all of a sudden he's accepted because all of a sudden he's become a Christian. Well, I don't think many people would find that story very credible, but it's not the first time this has happened. And there have been cases going back several years now, which again the Home Office have got wise to and are trying to clamp down on, where particularly people coming from places like Iran were then claiming, oh, I'm a Christian, therefore if I was sent back to my country, then my life will be in danger. And there's cases of people having crucifixes and other religious symbols tattooed on them to try and show that they've now become a Christian and therefore their lives are in danger. It's a nonsense. It's taking advantage of the system, and these sorts of people just should not be in the country at all.
It seems like there's fraud on a mass scale going on here. There are stories upon stories of people pretending to be something they're not in order to gain entry into the system. But isn't that all a little bit irrelevant, whether he was a Christian or not? The fact is, he was a convicted sex offender. How on earth does our system allow any convicted sex offender to get through?
Well, there's a whole load of reasons why this chap should not have been allowed to stay in the country. And the fact that he had a criminal record of sex offences as well alone should have been grounds for him being deported from the country. Now, the problem is that we do have problems trying to deport people from certain countries where it's very difficult to get them back to those countries. Iran is a case, Eritrea, and Afghanistan is certainly a case now. The Taliban are in control. And that is why the Rwanda scheme, controversial though it is such an important part of the jigsaw to try and prevent those people getting into the country in the first place, because it's so difficult to get them out of the country, even when they found to have no credible asylum case. So he shouldn't have been here. He certainly shouldn't have been here when he had a criminal conviction, and he certainly shouldn't have been given a third chance all of a sudden to say, oh, well, I'm a Christian, therefore I can't be sent back. It makes a nonsense of the system.
Under the Rwanda scheme, as it is currently constituted, with the bill going through Parliament as it is currently going through Parliament, would Rwanda be compelled to take someone with a criminal record? Or is this one of the many, many cases where Rwanda could say, actually, that person looks a bit too dangerous for us, you keep him?
Well, that's up to the negotiation of what's in the small print of who we can actually send to Rwanda. In most cases, it's people who come to the UK, usually using illegal people smugglers, who just do not have a credible asylum case at all. These are the people who we need to deter from coming here, and those would be candidates to be sent to Rwanda if they still endeavour to make that journey. But there are, I mean, with many cases, we can return convicted offenders to those countries, and in many cases, those people would then, if they are still serving a conviction, can serve those convictions in overseas jails. The problem is when you're dealing with countries, dysfunctional countries like Afghanistan and others, it's really problematic as to whether physically you can actually return them to those countries. But this person was clearly dangerous. He should have been monitored in somewhere if there was no way of putting him in in some secure institution. But I just don't understand how, on a third attempt, third time lucky, he was granted leave to remain and his asylum case was upheld.
Tim,
with apparently some vicar vouching for him that he was a genuine Christian. Well, how did that happen?
Tim, I want to be frank. Are women and girls less safe in this country because of our broken asylum system?
I don't want to generalise in that not all people coming to this country, many of them who are legitimate asylum seekers, we cannot conflate them with all being criminals and villains like this chap. The vast majority are not, and the vast majority are genuinely fleeing from persecution and danger. But a lot are not, and within those, there's some people who have very dodgy backgrounds and dodgy records as well. We were particularly concerned on the Home Affairs Select Committee by the very large number who came across, particularly a couple of years ago, from Albania, many of whom, again, had no credible claim for fleeing Albania and claiming asylum in the UK, but many of whom we know are involved in trafficking, in drug gangs and others. That's not to write off all of the Albanian population, absolutely not. But disproportionately, we have an awful lot of Albanians in jail at the moment.
Tim, I heard you were quizzing the Home Secretary and the Home Office officials the other day, and you were asking about the number of essentially migrants that the Home Office has lost contact with, or disengaged with, I think were the words of the Home Secretary. You suggested the number was as high as 33,000. If I remember correctly. This is very worrying for the general public.
Well, it wasn't my figure, and actually back in November we had the Permanent Secretary in front of us who, I have to say, gave a rather disastrous interview with us where they had to admit at that stage that there were just over 17,000 people who had withdrawn their asylum applications or had their asylum applications withdrawn in the previous 12 months. And I asked them, so where are these people now? Hopefully they've all been deported. And the answer then came back, well, we actually don't know. So since then, because of the pressure we've put on the Home Office, we've had some more detail about how many of those have actually been returned. Some of them are reporting to asylum services at the moment, but there's still a large chunk who we're not entirely sure where they are. And that's just not unacceptable. And then since then, we've had quite a lot of people coming across since the Legal Migration Bill came in last July, which is absolutely to try and clamp down on the people who are still using people smugglers. That's reduced that number, but it's still far too many, who have therefore come to the UK illegally. They've committed an offence and they have been put on bail pending how we deal with them and hopefully returning them out of the country. What I'm concerned about is that quite a few of those, do we really know where they all are and there being an account for them? And that's what we were challenging the Permanent Secretary to the Home Office and the Home Secretary about. I mean, the ministers take this incredibly seriously, but all the time we've got problems with returning people to their countries of origin. We don't have a Rwanda-type scheme which can actually take them out of the country.
Well, and Tim, we find out that Turkey's not a goer either. We find out that this morning, that Turkey's...
We need more agreements like that. And of course, the EU has had a very expensive agreement with Turkey, which we were originally part of. And that's prevented quite a few more people coming across the Aegean and into Greece and into the EU that way. But it would be helpful to have more returns agreements with countries because it's worked with Albania. 13,000 Albanians came across in small boats in 2022. Last year, the figure was
so just finally, Tim, a word from you on the Home Office civil servants themselves, the Home Office officials who have themselves... This isn't about another country not agreeing with us. This is the British government deciding that Turkey's not safe enough to have a returns agreement with. The EU has a returns agreement with Turkey. Why can't we?
Well, that is a very good point. And this news has only just come out this morning. Is Turkey an unsafe country? Well, I mean, Turkey have got a few questionable issues around and human rights and freedom of the press, but millions of Brits go to Turkey on holiday. Lots of people live in Turkey from abroad. It's not deemed to be an unsafe country by the EU because